Good afternoon, everyone. So we're just going to wait a couple of minutes, let everyone find their way in. I'm going to get comfortable. But yes, it's really great to be back streaming for Firestorm Studios again. Thank you all for coming along. It's great to have everyone here. Uh, we're going to be continuing with our A to Z of Zbrush, and we're going to be continuing creating our aardvark. So, for anyone watching, if you can let me know that how the sound is, if everyone can hear me okay, and if we need to adjust the levels, we will. So we'll just give everyone a couple more minutes, see who we get. Okay. So again, if there's anyone else if there's anyone in the chat that's watching away, please feel free to say hi in the chat and fire any questions that you might have about what we're doing, or even just ZBrush related, or 3D in general. It's all good here. Hey Patricia, thanks very much for coming along. You let me know if the audio is coming through okay, please. Alright folks. Well, we've got a few people watching both over on YouTube and over on Twitch, so we're going to start walking you all through what it is I'm doing. So we left our... No, I don't have I don't have any background music, Patricia, not right now. I still need to sort that out. So people are just going to have to put up with my dulcet tones. Hi, CC. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm quite happy with how our little aardvark is coming along. So the next thing I'm going to do here is we left off round about here, but I need to make a few changes to the proportions. I want to bring the legs in a bit more. I was studying some of the reference that I have for the aardvark and decided that it does need to, we still need to bring these elements in a bit closer. And that's a good thing to do. You know, as you're working through something, never be scared to just jump in and change it, okay? That's generally one of the reasons I work at lower resolutions for a lot longer, is so that I can constantly be changing and adapting the forms to my model. And you're going to get a lot of crossover like this when you start moving things around, but don't worry about it. This can all be fixed later on. So our goal for today is to, at the very least, give our aardvark some feet. He doesn't have any right now. So once we finish up changing and tweaking some of the forms, we're going to take a look at those feet. And as always, folks, the reference I'm using is in a pure ref. I'm not showing it on the screen at the moment. That's just to keep us all correct when it comes to copyright. But if you want to, you can feel free to do a Google search for aardvarks, and you can tell me if I'm going wrong, if I'm doing anything wrong. So let me see. A couple more things. It's a good way to warm up, I find, as well, is to start reassessing some of the forms of the face and the overall shape of what it is you're creating. And I also want to make sure that I'm not fully creating a hairless animal. While we might not be getting into any kind of groom or fur with this, I still want to create that volume that the creature has because of the fur that they've got on them. And depending on the reference image you find, sometimes the aardvark has longer fur, sometimes it's quite short. And there's also a fair amount of almost bald looking aardvarks. And I'm actually also kind of following an artistic choice to keep his ears rather large. So probably larger than they need to be. But that's my choice. And I'm sticking to it for the time being because I like the look of it. I'm going to try and make these ears look a bit more organic. They're looking very, very CG and spoon-like at this point. So we're going to start folding things over a little bit more here. So I'm going to do that simply by, need to mask out this area here. Like so. Invert that, soften the mask, and then I'm just going to start pulling this over. And when you're doing anything like this, you can use just a standard move brush, you can use the move topology brush, it really doesn't matter. Just always be thinking about the shape that you're creating. Think about it in 3D space. Okay, I know that sounds a bit obvious, but you'd be amazed how many times I see models go wrong because artists are not thinking about how the object actually exists in 3 dimensions. It's why when you'll see with some people who just start out 3D modeling, if they use a side and a front view, sometimes, a lot of times, the model will look quite cubed. It'll look very squarish, and that's just because you're only measuring it from 2 angles. You're only kind of referencing it from 2 sides, and you don't want to do that. Obviously, these are quite thick as well, so if we wanted to thin this down, we can go into our inflate brush and hold down the Alt key, and by doing that I'll be able to thin out some of these edges, like so. And do a little bit of smoothing here. And just start to kind of bury more depth into these ears and try and keep that thinness that I want, like so. Just keeping an eye on the chat, folks. Oh wow, we've got 28 people. Wow, the numbers on this stream go up real fast. It takes me by surprise every time. Okay, so to everyone that's joined the stream, welcome. It's really nice to have you all here. We're continuing with our A to Z of Zbrush, and we're sculpting out our little aardvark friend, who is called Arnold. And we're just refining some shapes here before we move on and give him some feet, because he's missing his feet. He doesn't have any at the moment. But while you're watching, I'm just going to dictate as best I can exactly what it is I'm doing, what I'm thinking, and hopefully that will help kind of clarify what you're seeing on screen. But if you do have any questions, feel free to fire something into the chat and I'll do my best to answer it. And even if it's not related to what we're sculpting and you're just curious about something about the industry or sculpting in general, you can ask questions about that as well. And I will, as I said, do what I can to answer it. I won't have answers for everything, but I'll do my damnedest. So at this point, the ears are starting to look, they're looking a little better. but the fact that they're oversized now is starting to really be obvious. So let's go ahead and bring these down in size. Go into perspective camera here. Drag out a transpose line. And I'm just going to scale that down. That looks about right. And I can also rotate that as well. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to rotate my model around so that I can adjust my transpose line. Now you can actually tell the transpose line to kind of snap into centers and stuff, but I generally find it's just quicker to move it. And then I can rotate this around ever so slightly to get a bit more of a natural look to the ears. Now there's going to be a bit of a mess, but that's fine. We can easily clean all that up. No big deal. Never be scared to make a change on your model at any point. Sometimes it's just, it can be a hard decision sometimes, but you just sometimes have to do that. All right. Okay, folks. I think we've done enough of a warm-up. We'll come back to the ears as well at another stage, but they're looking a little less fake now. They actually look like real ears. And we'll break up the symmetry as well later on. And I'm just going to flatten out the top of his head a bit. And now we're going to take a look at these feet. So this is one of the tricky things, because if you look at reference of an aardvark's feet, they're kind of weird. They're quite like shovels because they use them for digging a lot. And something I would always recommend whenever you're doing a project, like say like a digital animal, whether it's for your own personal projects or if you're working on it in a studio for a project, don't just look for reference of the animal, like photographs, etc. Try and find some video footage. Look at how the animal moves. That'll be a really good indication of how its anatomy works as well. A friend of mine recently pointed out that, is it pangolins? Pangolins walk in a really strange way. When they walk on their hind legs, they're very, very funny to watch. And it's not how you would immediately assume that they would move, but it's really worth watching. So always important to get video footage of the animal as well. See it in action. It will help. And learning about the animal itself can be useful as well. Right. So in order to work on these feet, we're going to start with the front feet, I think. And I'm just going to duplicate my model. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and just move up to our highest subdivision, and I'm going to delete my lower. I'm just going to work on one leg at the moment. So we're going to hide everything else, and we're going to delete hidden. Turn off my symmetry, hide one of the legs, delete hidden again. Now I'm going to go to reconstruct subdiv, and you'll see that what I've done is I've been able to bring back the subdivisions I had in my original model, but with this, just the leg on its own. All right. And let me just see if I can pick up some better reference for the foot. Let's see here. Try and find one that's not as hairy, so we can get some form of the leg as well. That's not bad. And they have four little claws, I think? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, maybe it's 5. Let me see here. Bear with me, folks. Just want to make sure you get the... okay, it's got a bit of a dew claw at the back, plus 4. Right, okay. going to double check this before we go any further. Yeah, it looks like it's got 3 major claws and then a bit of a smaller claw at the back. So, or 3 or 4. Oh well. If it's wrong, we'll change it, folks. It's not a big deal. So, I'm going to grab my subdivision level 2, delete higher. I'm going to delete lower, I think, and I'm going to close the holes. And remember, folks, the way that we approach these projects on the A to Z series is we don't do any kind of previous preparation other than reference images. That's all we get is reference images. And then we just go for it. We just see how we go. And that can be a lot of fun because you can learn a hell of a lot just by jumping straight in to a model like this. It kind of forces you to think on your feet a little bit more and really observe the model or the creature that you're making. So okay, so I'm going to bring out my damn standard here. I'm going to start sketching in some landmarks. So say landmarks, I'm just sketching roughly where I think I want the toes to go. They're going to come up this part of the foot a little bit and then kind of go in to here. So we need roughly where the elbow is and about there. Grab the move brush and start slimming down this front leg. It's definitely something I've not managed to capture properly, is the front leg, the length of the front leg properly. And again, that can be really tricky because a lot of creatures like this will have a lot of fatty tissue and a lot of loose skin and a lot of the time a lot of fur, so it can hide the anatomy. So animals can be very, very challenging to create. So don't feel downtrodden if it doesn't work the first time. You can always try again. So I hope everyone's having a good start to their week, and I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. And I will apologise as well, my voice is going a little bit. I was doing some teaching today for quite a while and I've lost a little bit of my voice, so. But I will keep dictating as we go along, just to keep everybody in the loop about what it is we're doing as we go. Yeah, though, finding good reference images of these at the feet of these things is tricky. They've got these really long claws, really, really long claws. So that looks like one there, and then got another one here, then another one there, and then they've got a little one here. Okay. And we will get some music for the next session, folks. I know I don't have any background music, but I'll try and get some for the next session. So what I'm generally doing here is I'm just trying to kind of figure out the overall length and shape that I want the feet to take. And this seems to, I've found a fairly relaxed version of the toe, for the front anyway. And I just want to make sure that the claw length is in there, and then we can go back and detail it a bit better a little bit later on. So again, for anyone that wasn't at the stream last time, the technique I'm generally using here, using the move brush to get the shape roughly where I want it, and then I'm refining that shape with the trim dynamic brush. This is a technique I was taught by Maddie Scott Spencer about, you know, rather than trying to kind of get that form immediately with the brush, using something like the trim dynamic, which essentially planes off slices of the brush, of the surface, should I say, and just overlapping them as you go, you create a very organic look, but you don't end up with the lumpiness that you sometimes will get when you're using something like a clay tubes brush or the standard brush. And that's not to say that you can't use those brushes, it's just this is a good technique I find if you're new to ZBrush. Allows you to kind of take things a little bit slower as you build up form. But the outcome is normally very, very good. So again, back to the move brush, start to kind of reshape and adjust, start to bring in little parts of the anatomy. Again, you don't need to know all the muscles, the name of the muscles, not initially at least. As long as you know what the shapes are, that's the most important thing. What shape does the muscle make on the creature? So generally the feet that they have are quite large, you know, quite chunky, blocky feet. There we go. So I'm going to bring back the body here so we can see where we were at before. There we go. I'm going to go in and hide. Right. Yeah, that's working quite well. Obviously, we've lost a bit of the shoulder here, but that's all right. We can fix that fairly easily. That foot's still not big enough. So I'm going to use the transpose line here again, draw that out and readjust. And actually, do you know what? This might be a really good, rather than using the transpose here, we can actually take a look at the anchor brushes inside a ZBrush, which if you've never used before, can be really useful. So let me go back to draw mode here. I'm going to go into the brush menu and I'm going to choose Anchors Classic. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to get an IMM viewer at the top here, where your light box would normally come down, and you're going to get an option to choose from these different brushes. So I'm going to rotate to the bottom of my model here, and I'm going to choose, let me see, scale. So I'm going to grab this, and all I have to do here is plot 2 individual points. So I'm going to click the back of the foot and the front. Now, if I click and drag the point at the front that I've plotted, I can scale that up. But alternatively, if I chose a different brush, say the inflate brush, I can do the same, but this time it'll inflate from that. And it's almost like using the transpose, but it's just a little bit more user-friendly for beginners. So that's a really kind of handy thing I will use quite a lot. I do like the anchor brushes, I find them quite helpful. So I'm just going to scale that up, and then I'm going to move it back. And then scale again, and move back. And then if we really want to kind of push this further, we can start spreading it out like that. There we go. So the foot generally kind of spreads out and then comes back and tapers into the middle. And it looks really messy right now, but we're going to clean that up very shortly. going to grab my gizmo, hold Alt to tap it onto the bottom of the surface, and then reset it so it's nice and flat. And then I'm going to clip the bottom of the foot just to flatten it a little bit. And the way you do that is by going into the gizmo, holding down Control, and then clicking on the scale and just moving that up and down, and it will clip the bottom of your mesh. So now that I've got that, I want to fix the width issue here. So we'll start bringing this up a little bit further, start merging it in to where the rest of the anatomy is, because I am quite happy with how the shoulder's working. It's just the overall arm I don't like. I'm going to have to hide part of my model here. Hold on. There we go. Just turn on double. I moved it. Yes, I did something really smart today, everyone. I deleted my custom UI from Zbrush just accidentally when I was doing something earlier today, and then I had to recreate it not long before I jumped on the stream. So some of the buttons might be in the wrong position, so you might see me searching for things again. But yeah, so I hope, as I said, I hope everyone's doing well. We seem to have leveled out about 30 viewers, so that's good. Welcome everyone. Feel free to share what it is you're working on, if you like, in the chat. And again, as I said, ask any queries or questions about the project we're doing, the techniques, or if you are wondering why I'm doing something a certain way instead of a way that you've maybe seen done elsewhere, feel free to ask. Okay, now that I've got that in the right place, I'm happier with the overall shape. We're going to go to the Z remesher and we're going to clean this up. But instead of just hitting the button, I want to show you how to use Z remesher guides in case you've never used them before. So if you go into the brush menu and then tap Z, it'll open up the Z modeler, Z project, and Z remesher guide brush. We're going to click the Z remesher guide brush, and I'm going to come out of perspective mode, and I'm going to click in the middle of my object and just drag out a line. And then if I tap Shift, okay, I thought it might do something like that. I'm going to change the size of my brush, because this can be very brush dependent. Do that again, click, hold Shift and drag out, and you'll see that what I've got is an edge loop guide. So if I try that again, release the brush, if there's anything left over, we can just hold Alt to remove it. Oh, ZBrush is being difficult. There we go. So what I've done here is I've added in an edge loop, like so. And you might have to do it a couple of times to get it exactly how you wish, but we're simply clicking, dragging, tapping Shift, and then releasing. There we go. That's what I wanted. And all this is doing is it's giving ZBrush a better indication of how we want our topology to be Z-remeshed, okay? So I'm going to take one freehand all the way down the middle. And you don't have to be overly detailed with this. You don't have to do loads of guides, but it can be very helpful. And then on the underside, I'm going to draw another guide around the edge, like so, and then do another one down the middle. Now, if we go back over to Z-remesher, now depending on the version of ZBrush you're using, your Z-remesher may look slightly differently, but it's all the same features, okay? So in here, I'm simply going to set that to adapt, turn off half, and I'm going to change this to, what have we got? That's 3,000 points, so I'm going to change this to 1,500. That's just the, sorry, not 1,500, my apologies, 150. Oh, wait a minute, my bad. Sorry, folks, brain is not working. 1.5 is what I meant to say. That should give me about 1,500 points, or it's going to aim to get us to about 1,500 points. And I'm going to leave everything at default, but you'll notice that there's a adaptive size and curve strength size option. So if you want to tell ZBrush to try and follow these guides closer, you can increase the curve strength option. But generally, leaving it at default will give you what you need. Hit Z remesher. It's cleaned up the whole shape. We don't need to do any projections here. We just wanted to clean up the shape a little bit more. And you can see that ZBrush has even given us this nice little loop under here on the foot. So now we can start softening everything off. Smooth it all back a bit. And we'll probably do another Z remesher once we make a few more changes. There we go. And this is where it's going to seem a bit weird because I'm going to chop off his foot once I create a claw for him. So to make that claw, we're going to append a cube. Then I'm going to create a Q cube. Now I am aware that there's macros to append these things, but what I'd like to do is try and show you where everything lives and where this stuff actually you can get to it if you forget about those macros. Okay, so I've created a standard cube and I'm going to go into initialize and then choose Q cube. That's going to change the scale of it and give us something with a little bit more manageable polygon count. Then we're going to subdivide it. We're going to actually delete some of these faces. So we're going to go to the Z modeler brush, delete some of the edge loops, and then I'm going to hit Control D once and then twice. And that gives me this nice sphere with lots of quads. Make sure we have symmetry on. And now we're going to start making the claw. So let me just get some reference here. So the claw that they seem to have here, it's like a shovel almost. It's curved at the top. It's got a curved top, but then it kind of stretches out and is flat at the bottom. So I think what we'll do is we'll delete the bottom sections. Oh, ZBrush has had a little bit of a fit there. So we're going to delete our lower subdivisions and we'll try that again. Delete hidden, close holes, and then I'm going to start moving some points around. So I'm just going to shift that out like so. Flatten it down. Come on, ZBrush. There we go. Sorry, folks. ZBrush is fighting with me. There we go. So I'm going to do something like that. We'll grab our Z modeler brush again so we can insert a couple of edge loops. The claw. I get that reference. Yeah, that was a subtle one. That was a subtle reference, Patricia, that I threw in there. But yeah, I'm glad you got it. I'm glad someone realised. I was starting to think, I was like, I should have been a little bit less subtle about that. So I'm just going to clean up some of these edges. It's not the most exciting thing at this point, folks, I know, but we will get to some more fun stuff in a second. But we have to do this. We have to do this. And then I'm just going to Z remesh the whole thing. Make sure I've got symmetry on. I'm going to drop that target polygon down to 1. And then I'm going to start halving it. And let's clip the bottom of this again. There we go. Z remesh. Okay. That's all I need for the time being. We can clean it up later. Hide the body. Hide the body. That was a loaded phrase, that, isn't it? So we'll just start blocking out where these should go. Let's get the symmetry off there. And the claws on the aardvark are they're so random. Like, they're very varied is what I've noticed. I seem to have, I think I've screwed that one up actually a little bit. Okay, bear with me, folks. And actually, this is quite good that I made a mistake, because I can show everybody another really useful tool in Zbrush. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the travesty that is this claw. And what exactly are you teaching people? Yeah, I know, right? I ask myself that every day, CC, every day. What exactly am I teaching people? So that's looking better. Looks actually like a claw now. And I'm going to keep this deliberately a little bit larger. I'm just going to grab a standard brush here. Make sure Lazy Mouse is on. It is, that's fine. And I'm just going to drag a line down the middle. And this is just to raise up the that part of the claw, and it'll give me a little bit more to work with here. Just to sharpen out a bit. And I have a bit of a rule when I'm doing kind of creatures and stuff. I don't really mind if something like claws look a little bit wonky. And that's partly because if you want them to look any way realistic, you don't want them to be perfect. You don't want perfect symmetry a lot of the time. So it's not really, has never bothered me if something looks a bit off. I think it just adds to the realism of it a little bit. Okay. There we go. Raise me up. Sorry, I'll stop now. Okay. So we need to do a bit of concaveness to this, so we're just going to... We don't have a lot of geometry now, do we? So I'll just mask this out. There we go. Soften it and just push that up. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Well, it's not perfect, but you know. All right, folks. Now that that's done, let's bring back the character's foot. And this is what I wanted to showcase. Now, we might want to make changes to the character claws at any point, but we want to put them in the right position so that they look right for our model. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the stager function in Zbrush. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but it's one of the best things that I think Maxon or Pixelogic, I can't remember when it was added exactly, but it's fantastic. So if you go into the geometry rollout under the tool palette, oh, we got a follower, I think. Hubris, hey Marlena. I know this follower, people, that's why I recognize the name. So what we're going to do is in the geometry rollout, we're going to go down to stager. And with my model where it is, this is my subtool, my rubbish claw that I've just made, and I'm going to tap on the home stage button. Okay? What this has done is it's going to load or save this position of this model. That includes its translate, rotate, and scale at this point on the canvas. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to position this on my character. So I'm just going to, and I can just scale this down, turn off my symmetry, scale it down, and rotate it into place until I'm mostly happy with how it looks. Let's see here. Again, we don't have the toes in place yet, but we can sculpt them later once I get this looking decent. There we go. All right. That looks pretty good. So now that I've got that in the position I'm happy with, I can go back over to the stager function and choose target stage. Now, what that's done is it's saved this new position and the scale and the rotation in that spot. So if I use the switch stage button, I can now jump between it. And if I make any changes to the sculpt here, so let's say we subdivided it and I decided to add some detail onto the claw like this. If I do switch stage, it's going to keep that detail on the sculpt. So it's going to keep the subdivision and it's going to keep the detail I've sculpted, but it will swap it between those two saved positions for the translate, scale, and the rotate. All right, really helpful thing to do, particularly when you're working on, say, a costume that's got lots of hard surface parts that you might want to keep looking straight down on an orthographic view, and because it's just easier to sculpt details and then switch it back onto maybe the side of an arm or part of a backpack. Okay, so something to keep in mind. And if anybody wants me to go over that again, just let me know. Hi Marlena, thanks for joining, appreciate it. So there we go, folks, that's how the stager works. And in case you're wondering, there's an interpolate button under here. Depending on the 2 points that you have picked, if you press this button, my apologies, it only works with no subdivisions. It's one of my biggest gripes sometimes with ZBrush. Things just don't work. I'll show you how it works. I'll show you how this works. If I grab myself a cube and we'll move this over here, I'm going to change its size and I'll go back into Stager, hit the home stage, and then I'm going to move it, scale it, and I'm going to rotate it. Like so. And I'm going to hit target stage. Now I can switch between those 2 points, same as we did with the claw. But if I hit interpolate, ZBrush will do this. And if I undo that and then increase the stages and hit interpolate, it'll create more of them. And ZBrush is just going to change and adjust the interpolation to meet what it looks like at the target stage. So from point A to point B, it's going to interpolate between them. Really cool feature, because if I undo it, go back to the target stage, oh, there we go, and I moved it this way and hit target stage, I can switch between them, and then if I interpolate it with a few more stages, it'll do that. So you can see it's going to give me even more, and it's going to rotate it more as well. Okay, so there we go, folks. That's how the stager and interpolation works. Slight digression, but anyone who's watched my personal stream will know that tends to happen. Right, let's get back to our aardvark. The more I look at this, let me turn on transparency here for my aardvark. I like the foot, but I don't like the arm anymore. Don't like the leg. I actually quite like what I've done here. So, it's all right, mistakes are made. So we're going to just chop that off. Delete face. Close. Smooth it down. And then I'm going to bring that into my new version of my character. So this is where we're going to do a little bit of, this is where things can get a little bit confusing. I'm going to duplicate my model again, and I'm going to start bringing, I'm going to join the foot back up into this. So first of all, I want to take my duplicate, delete the lower, and I'm just going to slice the leg where I think it needs to be sliced. So I'll hold down Control Shift, go into the knife tool, so knife curve, drag a line. And the way this works, if you've never used these before, the dotted line at the top, that's the top of your cut. And then wherever the gradient is pointing is the area of the mesh that's going to be removed. So if I was to cut this way, it's going to remove everything past that gradient. So I'm just going to do that, and it gets rid of that part of the leg, allowing me to come back to here and start adding in this bit, like so. And I will shut up for a bit while I start to actually work this up into something that looks decent. And don't worry about the fact that we're not working on two sides. We'll mirror it across before we merge it. Okay, so while I'm doing this, folks, feel free to, as I said, ask questions in the chat, and I'll get to you when I can. Where's my stager? There we go. Switch stage. And I think one of the things I need to do with the... I'm actually going to use the knife tool here again, and I'm going to cut. Yeah, because they're quite... Go into the gizmo, choose taper. There we go. I'm going to hide the body. And let's get the rest of these into place now. So we'll grab this, we're going to hold control and click and drag, and this is where things might go a bit wrong with our... You know what? That's what we're going to do. I'm going to do this the smart way, folks, which I know is unlike me. I'm going to go to switch stage, and I'm going to hold control, click and drag to make a duplicate of the claws I need, which are these three larger ones at the front, and then there's a smaller one at the side. But you see that as I switch stage, ZBrush has remembered what I've done at the home stage. So now I can put these into place like so, and I can start working them until they look right. It's a really useful feature, folks. It speeds up your workflow significantly. Just do an auto groups here. Move this one back. And then I can start sculpting up the foot a bit more. So we're going to have to dynamesh everything together, unfortunately. I say unfortunately, it's just the nature of it. So I'm as well dynameshing the foot. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to subdivide it. Also, folks, something I do like to do on my streams is I like it when viewers, if they have an idea or if they see I'm doing something wrong, like call it out. Okay. Anyone who's been taught by me, any students of mine that have been taught, know that I'd sometimes play dumb to kind of test people, which I know is really cruel, but it's a really, really useful teaching aid. So go for it if you want to. So I'm just going to just get rid of some of this. Let's do this the quick way. There we go. Let's do this. Let's get rid of this. There we go. Get rid of all that. Perfect. Now we need to add this little dew claw, which is the smaller claw that you sometimes find on the back of a dog or cat's foot, or just a mammal's foot in general. So I am going to switch the stager again. So I'm going to go back to home stage. Oh, is that it? There we go, wrong one. And I'm going to give myself another claw to work with. Move that to the side. And then switch back to the foot. Auto groups. And then we can just start scaling that bad guy down, and then pop him in there. It's gonna, seems to look as though it goes just underneath. And I could be wrong, but again, this is the reference I have for the aardvark. It's the best I can find at the moment. I'm not sure about anyone else, but I find it really difficult sometimes when I'm looking for reference images not to come across lots of AI stuff, which annoys me. It's really difficult sometimes. I get quite irritated by it. So I'm just going to now I mean, there is ways around it, but it's so frustrating because you forget that you've got to put in certain terms to try and not get past, so you don't end up with AI stuff everywhere, all over your information when you're Googling stuff. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and reconstruct the subdiv here, which worked because I need to inflate the end of these because these shouldn't have been concave. That was a mistake on my part. So I need to inflate the back of the claw. The claw. I love the fact that that's just a pop culture thing now. Because I guarantee there's people watching that weren't even born when Toy Story came out. In case anyone's wondering, Toy Story came out in 1995. Don't say that. That's all right. I remember I was teaching a class once, and I remember a student mentioned to me that he's basically he's younger than the Maya software. He was born after it released, which I couldn't figure it out in my head. I was like, oh wait, okay, that makes you such and such. It's just funny. It's just one of those things, you know, happens. But and I don't know why I'm surprised, because all the software I started on when I was getting into the industry, I was born after it came out, so it really shouldn't be that much of a shock. Alright folks, it's pop quiz time, and if anyone gets that movie reference, feel free to put that in. Pop quiz, hotshot. I can't say the rest of it because I think Twitch might shout at us, so YouTube definitely will. So if anyone out there, if anyone can tell me, see if you can figure this one out, if you know, when was Zbrush released? Roughly, doesn't have to be exact, roughly what year, and see if anyone knows, and if anyone knows when, or anyone knows roughly how old things like Blender or Maya are. I'd love to know if anyone's as nerdy about this stuff as I am. Unlikely, but okay. Starts Googling. Oh yeah, you're not allowed to use Google. That's cheating. No. So yeah, you might be a bit surprised, you know. I mean, ZBrush, I mean, I'll wait till see if we get some answers, but yeah. And yeah. So the plan is, folks, ideally we're about just under an hour in here. We have stopped. We haven't really done we stopped to show a quick demo, but we're not. The plan here is to hopefully have a pretty complete aardvark by the end of this. But it's not going to be the end of the world if we don't. So there we go. Right, so I need to get these indications of where the toes are going now. So a little bit of an anatomy block out here, right? Just to start getting those feet in. I'll do this manually. Okay. Thank you, Cece. I forgot to save. I haven't saved yet, so we're going to do that. We're going to save the aardvark. Yeah, folks, I'm terrible when it comes to doing live streams. I forget to save all the time. So it's a bit of a problem, and I think it causes regular viewers of my other stream a lot of anxiety. So we'll just start to indicate again. Not worried about it being perfect at this point. There we go. So I'm thinking as well, I've been thinking a lot about this this stream, folks, and my kind of plan is that if we do a bunch of random letters from the alphabet, just picking up what it is we want to sculpt or draw or create here, and then we're not going to finish them to kind of like complete final pieces, but we think of them more as sketches. And then I'm thinking of doing a bit of a vote or like a poll on what people want to see as a worked up model on another stream later on. And then that means that the favorite overall is one that we work up into a final model. So that's something I think I'm going to kind of do. And hopefully I'm streaming long enough on Firestorm for us to get through the whole alphabet. That's the goal, folks. That's the goal. So, okay. Grab the trim dynamic. Start cleaning up some of this mess that I've made. How are we doing? 32 people. Okay, so we've got a few more new people coming in. So, hi there, folks. For all the new people that have joined the stream, my name's Pat, and we are in the middle of doing the first in our A to Z of Zbrush. And we are creating an aardvark. So this is Arnold, our aardvark. And yeah, he's coming along quite nicely, I think. We're going to end up just copying this foot onto all the other feet, because the feet for the aardvark are more or less the same for the rear and the front. They have shorter claws at the back than they do at the front, but we can fix that easily. So for a little bit of background on myself, folks, I've been working in the CG industry for almost 17 years. 10 years, the last 10 years I've focused specifically on VFX in the VFX industry. And I've been very, very lucky to work on a lot of projects, a lot of great projects with a lot of amazing artists. So I consider myself very fortunate in that regard. I did work very hard for it though. That's something I want to kind of make clear. It didn't just happen. And if you want something bad enough, folks, if you have a dream job or something like that that you want badly enough, if you work hard at it, you will get it. I know that's very cliched, but it's true. But the one thing I will say is that it's not going to happen necessarily on your timeline. So don't be disheartened if it doesn't work. If you make a plan, like, you know, this, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's great that you see yourself there, but if it doesn't happen, don't freak out about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, I was right. There is a little dew claw here, but it looks like I've made it a bit too short. I say short, I've actually moved it down. It's not high up enough, so we're going to have to move it to here, and then just have it hang down a bit like that. There we go. Might not be called a dew claw, by the way. I know it's called a dew claw on other animals, but it might not be called that on a aardvark. There we go. So obviously I've abandoned the stager at this point, but I'm all right with that. I'm okay with that, folks. Like I said at the last stream, you know, you just, you know, don't get too precious about this stuff. Just keep sculpting. It's like if it starts to look rubbish, that's okay. You just keep working at it until it doesn't look rubbish. I know that's not necessarily the best advice. You're like, how do I get better? Just keep doing it until it doesn't look rubbish. But there is truth to that because it's all about practice. That's all it is. You just keep, if you the only way you will improve at something is to keep doing it. So how old is Zbrush? Well, to my recollection, Zbrush came out in 1990. I think it was between 97 and 98. 99, sorry. It didn't really hit the big time until the early 2000s. And my understanding, and if there's anybody from Zbrush or Maxon watching, unlikely I know, but I'm almost certain that it started life as a 2.5D painting program before it was ever meant for what we all use it for. That's why it works so well the way it works, because of the technology behind and all the tech behind the way that geometry's kind of looked at in the software. And I first discovered version, I think it was version, I'm going to say 2 or 2.5 when I was at university. Explains the name. Yes, exactly, because it's the whole idea is it was supposed to be, it uses Antonis. Hey, Antonis. Thanks for joining. The Zbrush uses something called pixels, which are kind of similar to voxels. And that's why it's able to kind of kick around, you know, hundreds of millions of polys fairly easily without like falling over on itself. Okay. Right. Okay, what we got here? So I'm just sorry folks, I'm just looking at a bit of reference here, make sure I get things correct. I'm just gonna have to pull this bit out a little bit here just to get the shape right. That looks okay, and then that goes up to there. We're probably going to have to bring this elbow up, or this knee up, okay? I always wanted to learn ZBrush, but at uni they taught us Mudbox. Well, Mudbox is actually what I moved to. I started with, I checked out ZBrush at version 2.5, but when I was at uni, but unfortunately, there wasn't an easier way to learn it. And I should point this out, folks, that back when I was at university in 2003, there was no YouTube. And the YouTube that was around was just funny videos of cats and people going to the zoo. So there wasn't the kind of learning material available like there is now. So I went over and I moved over to Mudbox because it was more readily available and it had the same kind of layout as Maya did. So it was a lot easier for me to kind of move over to it. But even then I didn't really use it properly, because I didn't understand how to use the software properly. So I just stuck with Maya. Okay. Well, you have, okay, so that's on the outside, so that's fine. So it's 3 toes. Sorry, folks, I'm literally just thinking out loud on my reference here. So, which is something I do a lot, which must be great for the streaming community, you know. And I'm sorry to the editors at Firestorm for my constant rambling. So remember, we don't have any subdivisions here anymore. So we are moving this in pretty large volume here. So we've got to be careful we don't make it lumpy, but we will fix it shortly once it gets all put together. And I think I'm going to just bite the bullet and do that now, folks. So we're going to go back to the foot and I'm going to mirror it. So we're going to go to Z plugin, subtool master, mirror, merge into one subtool. Okay. Going to bring back the aardvark, grab the feet. We're going to use the same technique we did before. Hold down control. Oh, excuse me, folks. And we're going to control click to make a duplicate. Now, it's not going to work because we have subdivision, so we'll delete lower and move that back, like so. Okay. Now we're going to get the knife tool out again, and we're going to cut the leg off the back, like so. And then we're just going to make some changes to the back feet, just to make it all line up a little bit nicer. Sad that left Mudbox to die like that. It doesn't get any updates. No, it is a bit of a shame because Mudbox is actually a really good piece of software. And it's a better texturing tool than Zbrush is, if I'm being honest. It's got better layer system, but it only has these because it works more like a traditional 3D application, whereas Zbrush doesn't. So Mudbox is a fantastic piece of kit, but I have to be honest, its sculpting it's just, no, it's nowhere close to Zbrush. It doesn't even come close. It's not even a competition in my opinion. And I do own I have a license of Zbrush, Mudbox. I use it for various things. It does a great job of vector displacements. I still use it for baking out vectors when I need to. And it's really good because if you're doing any lineups, like likenesses and such like that, and you have the camera data, you can take that straight into Mudbox and line things up a little bit easier than you could in Zbrush. However, with the advent of Zbrush's new UI, which will be coming at some point next year, hopefully, I'm really praying that we get proper perspective cameras as part of the update, so that we can, and multiple views, so that it's just a bit easier to reference images. Then we never have to leave Zbrush. Okay, so now that I've got that kind of in place, I'm just going to make a few changes here. Is that looking all right? Looks like this has to come back a bit, but we'll fix that in a second. All right. So now that we've got all of our parts in one place, we're going to merge down. So merge down, hit OK. So we're just stuck with this. Now we're going to, we've got, again, we have options here, folks. We can either use the gizmo, and we can use a remesh by union, or we can do a remesh by dynamesh, if you want to. If you want to do, this was really cool because Ian Robinson and Rodolfo covered this actually on a double stream they did the other day. Is the remesh by dynamesh in the gizmo. If you click on it, you'll get a box that gives you a cone that you can basically pick a target polygon count for your dynamesh, which is really helpful. So if I grab this cone, you can see that its target polygon count is 5,000. Well, my polygon count for this creature is 164,000, right? So that's my polys on this. So that way I can just move this cone until I'm just over the 160,000 point of view. So maybe there, release it, and hopefully nothing will have changed. There we go. Did I masked the feet? Oops. I need to try that again, folks. Sorry. The feet were masked at the front, so we'll try again. So again, we're going to grab the cone, move that up to, so you can go up to 1,000,000. I think it's 1,000,000. Yeah, it is, it's 1,000,000. But I don't need that many. So I'm going to undo it and just drag it to the, let's say 180,000. There we go. Oh, I did it again. Sorry, folks. Okay, Zbrush is just being difficult with me today. It's just plain silly buggers. So let's step forward clear the mask, go into the options, remesh by Dynamesh, make sure we've got the right number, let it go. There we go. So now, if we come out of that, go into the gizmo, accept, we now have the feet connected to the body. Oh, and look what I've done to him. Look how I've massacred our boy. So we're going to step back. Let's see. There we go. Try again, folks. Where are we? Remesh by Dynamesh. Let's try you again, shall we? Oh, I know why it's doing that. It's because of the way that this is angled. So we'll just do that. Turn off symmetry. Go back into the gizmo. Remesh by Dynamesh, and it shouldn't do it this time, I hope. There we go. Ah, but the feet are still masked. There we go. Okay, folks. We're going to give up on this because it'll just slow us down and it's just not playing nice with me. So I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, and I'm going to go into the Geometry tab, Dynamesh, and we're going to do the picker. Grab it. What is it? It says 152, so we will put that to, I'm going to go 200, and hit Dynamesh. And this is something that I would really recommend. If something in the software is just doing that and it's just not playing nice, move on. Move past it. Try something new, that kind of thing. And I've just noticed that it absolutely butchered my character's ears, which I'm not happy about, but we'll deal with that. There we go. So, symmetry back on. We're going to do a mirror, where is it? Mirror and weld. And we're going to start cleaning up the transition between where the feet and the legs were. So, a bit of clean up here before we move on to the next stage. So we're going to do a bit of anatomy. Now, I'm just going to bring up my anatomy reference here, and I think it's this looks like, I have a feeling, folks, this is going to be a three-parter, I think. Apologies. Just had a few problems that I'm not overly happy about. But as I said, can't do anything about it, so we just move on. Don't be sad, give up. Only when it comes to software being difficult. It's not worth your time. So I'm going to start breaking up the back of the leg now. So I really enjoy using the pab cleanup, the pab lander cleanup brush, or the clean clay brush. I find it's a very, the profile on the brush is excellent for building up anatomy. And all I'm doing here is just using that single brush. And the way I tend to use the brush, because this is actually it's more about how you're using the tool than the tool itself, I suppose. That's why you can use pretty much any brush you want to get the effect that you need. But note how I'm building up the form. I'm not just kind of like drawing it in. I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about the direction of the muscle based on the reference I have. And generally, so, you know, I've got the kind of deltoid up here, which is going to go up onto the scap here, like that. Okay, that's just a quick sketch to show you, but I'm thinking about the shape that the deltoid makes. I don't have to do every striation, but when you're using a clay brush, it tends to give you that effect for free. So as I'm building that up, I'm immediately kind of smoothing it back to keep everything blended in, because I'm not going for an écorché. I want the shape. I want the shape of the animal and its anatomy. I also have, alongside the musculature that I've got, I also have a photograph of the aardvark itself, and it's one that doesn't have a lot of fur on it, so I can start to see where the creases and the wrinkles go for each part of the animal. So that's keeping me right. Is it raining? It is raining, yes. Can you guys hear the rain? I apologize. I didn't realize it was picking it up. Let me drop my mic down a bit for you. There you go. Hopefully that doesn't... I do have noise cancelling on, folks, so I'm surprised that you can pick up the rain, but yes, it is raining here. It's another reason why I should probably get some background music for people, so when it is quiet. So again, using the exact same techniques as before, blocking out form using the clean up the clay brush or the standard brush, and then going straight into the trim dynamic to clean up that form. All right, folks. So we'll grab our pad cleanup again, and get a bit of shape in there, and then we're going to bring a little bit of the indication of where the scap's going, just here. To be honest, we probably need a better material so that you guys can see this a bit easier, so bear with me. Let's see what we've got. Projects, materials. Okay, what do we have? Actually, let's go up. Let's go into, where am I? That's alphas. Collections. And let me just go into Publander. Where is it? So here you can see, folks, some of the things that I generally pick up. If I can find it, there we go, Publander. Let's see, how does this look? You know what? No, we won't use that one. There we go. Perfect. Okay. I really like this material. I find it's really quite useful for... If you don't come back for the end of the day, everyone. Brilliant. Thanks, EC. Thanks for coming along. I find that this material is really useful for kind of sculpting form. Really, really helpful. So again, smoothing back all these shapes. And remember, a lot of the time I only need a small indication of the anatomy because I've already worked out a lot of the form anyway when I did my initial block out pass. So that's something that I always try and do. It's why it's so important to do such a clean... Will you be making another model after this? Yes, I will be, Julio, I will be. Not on this stream, obviously, but we will be doing one later on, other streams. And if anyone's interested, you can also follow me on my personal stream, which is over here on Twitch. It's BR3D, twitch.tv BR3D, and I generally stream on a Wednesday at 7 o'clock UK time. So Again, folks, I'm having to kind of interpret some of the anatomy from the reference I've got, so it might not be perfect, but it's working okay so far. Again, going for shapes. I'm not trying to kind of like specifically create every single muscle. There we go. Let's get some, start to fill in some of the form here. Start to refine a little bit of the shape. We don't need as deep a groove here, because again, we've got skin and fatty tissue in there as well that we have to take into account. I'm going to start bringing each stroke around in a kind of circular motion. I'm thinking about sculpting around an object rather than just sculpting onto it. Okay. Nope. And I might do, if I get a chance, I might do a little bit of this sculpt to kind of speed us along between now and the next stream, but not much. If I get a chance, I might not though, folks. Grab the damn standard brush, start carving in some of these details. We're looking a little bit flat here, so I'll grab the move brush, start plumping some of this out. Inflate brush. I haven't been able to bring all of my brushes back over yet from when I deleted the UI, so it's a shame that it is actually a shame that I can't show you the reference images, folks, because I know that must be, it's good if you can see the reference that I'm working from, but okay, so we need to start decartoonifying the head a little bit. Right, I need a close-up of a nose. Show your nose, folks. There we go. So we've got the shape coming in round like so. Okay. And we're just going to grab those and push them in a bit further. There we go. Time are we at, folks? Okay, we're at 25 past 5. So we won't have made as much progress as we did last week, but that's kind of how this goes. What makes you choose ZBrush over Blender? What makes me choose ZBrush over Blender? That's a very good question. Typically, is because I never really used Blender when I started out in the industry, and Blender was not the tool that it is now when I started in the industry. It was still just an open source program. It was still very good, but it wasn't really used the way it is now. And being honest, the sculpting tools in it are fantastic, but they still are not as good as the ones in ZBrush. And it's just personal preference. There's nothing wrong. If you want to sculpt in Blender, you can. If you want to sculpt in ZBrush, or you can even do 3D coat. It's entirely up to yourself. But for me, no, this is the tool that was out when I was learning, and when I first joined the industry, because I started to learn ZBrush in 2008, which was my second year in the industry, and I got paid to do it as well. That was the best thing about it. I actually got paid to learn ZBrush. But that's why I pick ZBrush over Blender every time. If I'm being honest, I would learn as many as you can, but I know that that's not always an ideal situation. And I'm biased if I say, I would be quite biased, but I would personally suggest learning ZBrush. I think it's the better tool for sculpting than Blender is, because that's its job. It is completely focused on sculpting. Blender does a lot of other amazing stuff that ZBrush can't even go near. So that would be if you're just wanting to get into sculpting, then yeah, I would suggest going with ZBrush. But if you just want to learn the 3D pipeline and how, polygon modeling, rigging, effects, compositing, groom, then you go with Blender, But Blender's free. That's the great thing about it. That is its best. One of its best features is that it's free, so anyone can pick it up and start learning. But you generally find that people stick with the tools that they first learned on. That's why I stick with ZBrush. It's why I stick with Maya all these years. And for a very brief time, I actually switched completely from Maya over to Modo, which was at the time owned by a company called Luxology. And then the Foundry bought it and buried it, in my opinion. So it was a bit of a shame. Blender sounds better for me, since eventually I want to go into rigging and Anna. In that case, then yeah. But yes, unfortunately, Modo was a fantastic polygon modeler, and it got buried. Similar to the way that, things happen with Mudbox. It's just when there's a more popular tool, people just gravitate towards it. And I think Luxology, I think the reason that Modo died is because people didn't realise that they had it, and they just thought the program had gone, which is a shame, because it was a really good piece of software. So all I'm doing now, folks, is I'm outlining some more details for the eyelids and the eye socket area, just trying to kind of get a little bit more of a realistic look, but without going too far with the geometry. We don't want to kind of push it so that it's really detailed. So you grab the move brush here and just start pulling in what I can and just readjusting the shape. There we go, that's looking a bit better. It was looking a little bit too brow heavy there, looked a little bit menacing. We don't want a menacing looking aardvark. Okay. Again, something that's really difficult to get a good shot of is the mouth. And I think I went way too high up there for I think I was right the first time. I think it's round about there. And they do kind of have that natural smile, which I find always really funny with some animals. So where is I do have a skull somewhere, which is going to be helpful for this. I can figure out. So their lips obviously are come quite far forward, but their jaw does obviously go very far back. So let's start outlining where the skull actually sits. So we've got the socket here, and then you've got the kind of cheekbone or the kind of zygomatic, which is going to come up about here, and then our jaw sits round about there. And again, see, I'm not doing this on a layer or a morph target because I'm working at a fairly low res, so I can just smooth away any sketches that I do. I'm just giving myself some landmarks so that I know that I'm roughly in the right kind of place for it. I know that I'm getting everything kind of where it should be. But yeah, so folks, we have another 30 minutes left before we finish up for our today. So if anyone has any other further questions or queries, feel free to throw them into the chat. So we need that there. So you can see that we're kind of going down almost a bit of an écorché route here because we've outlined roughly where we want our skeleton to go. But we will get rid of it. We are going to get rid of that. So once I check yeah, that's fine. And I'll do the exact same thing I did before, just blocking in some rough form, and I'm going to refine the shape. Julio is now following. Thank you, Julio. Appreciate the follow. That noise still surprises me every single time. So, and I'm just using the trim dynamic to knock it back. Also, Julio, you asked about sculpting, and the sculpting looks good here. Bear in mind that the ZBrush isn't really the important factor here. Practicing and sculpting and observing shape and form is what's important here. Everything I'm doing here, you could adapt this into Mudbox, 3D Coat, Blender, anything that you can sculpt in, Nomad, on the iPad. You can do it on any sculpting tool, okay? It's not going to work exactly because you can't obviously use the same tools in every piece of software, but that's irrelevant in my opinion. It's all about observation. The reason it's good is because, thank you, Julio, I appreciate that. But again, I've been doing this a long time, and again, as I said, it comes down to practice, and it's just practicing form and observation. And it's good. This is the reason I chose an aardvark is because I've never modeled an aardvark before. I like aardvarks. They're one of my favorite animals. And yet I've never gotten a chance to sculpt one before. So they do have this really kind of prominent part on their snout, which is where essentially on the face, this is where you're going to see more of also like an anatomical look. It's an anatomical look because there's very little very fat on the face of most animals. So this actually, I've done that wrong. That's got to come down from there. And again, what's this? Looks awesome for the first time working with. Thanks, Julio. Appreciate that. again, it comes down to once you've practiced enough and you've got enough experience working on different projects, different animals, you know, again, it becomes a case of observation. And I know I'm going to sound like a stuck record, but that is the key thing. It's you look at your reference, and it's that age-old thing. You don't sculpt what you think you see. You sculpt what you see. Okay. And if you don't have a clean reference for, say, like I don't have a good shot of an aardvark from underneath its chin, so I have to kind of then look at other animals that are similar, and then maybe indicate from there how that's going to work. Okay. And what I'm doing here as well, folks, this is just again another how I kind of apply form. I know that I've got the edge of the bone for the jaw, for the lower mandible, and then all I'm doing is I'm orientating my model in such a way that I can create individual strokes across that model in an arc fashion, in a curved fashion. So I'm layering up the form in stages. But I'm thinking about it as a 3D object. I'm not just kind of, as I said before, I'm not just scribbling it on. And this can be sometimes a very slow way to work, and not everybody will work this way. This is just what I personally find gets me the results that I want. And then I can smooth it back into the model. And I am speeding up a little bit, not lie. I'm starting to be a bit sketchier with what I do, just so we can try and get as much done as we can before the finish of our stream. Nose is looking a little bit wide at the moment, so we'll just bring that in a bit. There we go. I'm going to take the inflate brush here, a really small brush size. Just inflate the end of the nose. You can see why they're called earth pigs. I believe that's what aardvark translates to in Afrikaans, is earth pig. It's a good name. So we need to bring that up to there. Okay, let's put our perspective on. Let's have a quick look at the model. Now, something that I will do myself quite often is I will always take my model into a full 3D program, something with a true perspective camera. And it's one of the reasons I really hope that with the new UI change in Zbrush that we do get a true perspective camera, because it really helps when you're trying to figure out form and make sure that everything's looking right, particularly if you're matching a real life reference, like an actor or just a likeness of a human being. It's really important. So I'm going to dig into the ear here a bit. I'm going to mask that and then invert it, tap, and just orientate that, because we want that in there. There we go. Again, I'm going to take the inflate brush and just build up that edge again. That's better. How long we got? Okay, 20 minutes, folks, 20 minutes. I've never been a fan of speed sculpting, really. But sometimes you got to just work a bit faster. Well, folks, obviously because we're now coming to near the end of our stream, I'm just going to start my usual thank yous. So I want to thank everyone who's come along to this afternoon. And depending on where you are, it might be a different time of day. I'm going to change the size of the eyes. Don't actually think they're as big as they should be. There we go. That's better. Back to the main pig. Right, let's do a little bit of house cleaning here. We're going to take the claws and I'm going to reset that, and we're going to do Z plugin mirror, merge into one subtool. Then we're going to take those control click, control click and move them back, and then put them into the back feet as well. But this time we're actually going to push them back a little bit further and just readjust them, because the claws at the back are a little bit shorter than those at the front, because they're not doing as much digging with the ones at the back. So with that in mind, we need to do a small change to the overall shape of the foot, just to accommodate for the shorter throw of the claws. And these are not perfect in any way either, by the way, folks. You know, they still need a lot of work. So we're going to take the last claw at the back and just reseat that. Oh. Try that again. Sorry if I'm moving the camera about quite a lot there, folks. I know it can be a little bit disorientating sometimes. There we go. That'll do. Of course, I've now spotted something that's annoying me, so I'm going to have to fix it. This will happen. I'm sure this happens to a lot of you. You see something on a model and you're like, oh no, I missed that. I need to fix it, and I need to fix it now, because I'll probably forget again. So the form here is looking a bit ropey. So we'll just go in and fix that up a little bit. Same technique I used on the mandible, just a little bit broader. Always happens to me when I'm about to wrap up for the day and leave work. Exactly, Marlena, exactly. So what I'm going to do now is just start adding some, I guess you could call them a bit of a tertiary detail. But not really for this kind of animal, because it's really part of its initial form. There's always like a bit of a loose part of skin that, when there's no fur on it, kind of takes it up onto the body. And that's what creates that nice soft transition. So okay, now we're at a point where the model needs to be Z-remeshed. We need to be able to step up and down those subdivisions so that we can start refining the shape a bit better and get results faster. So we're going to do what we did last week. First of all, I'm going to save, and then we don't need to actually duplicate or do much to it, really. What we do need to do is hold down Control and store this history state. So that ZBrush is going to remember what the creature looks like at this point. Then I'm going to go make sure symmetry's on, go into my Z-remesher, and we will just put the settings to default, turn on adaptive, and we're just going to hit Z-remesher, and we're going to see what it gives us. It's the standing desk. It's that standing at the desk for 10 more minutes type fixes. Exactly, yes. Exactly. So, after the default of just putting the Z-remesher in, we can see that it's done a really good job of keeping a lot of the detail, but I'm not overly happy with the face. So let's undo that. I'm going to change the material so that what I'm about to do is a bit easier to see. And in the Z-remesher options, I'm going to choose Keep Polypaint, and I'm going to increase the target poly count to 7. I'm going to grab a paintbrush, and with Keep Polypaint on, let's just, sorry, my apologies folks, not Keep Polypaint, use Polypaint, this one here at the bottom. That will automatically, if I've done that right, which I haven't, there we go, try that again. I'm going to change the colour to pink, and I can paint around the face, like so. And when I do that, if I do the whole, let's just do the whole head. What I'm telling ZBrush is that I want the lion's share of the topology to go towards the head, because we've got some fine details in there. We want to be able to hold up as much of that form as possible. So once it's in place, we're happy with that. That's great. And we'll just hit Z remesher, and we'll see what difference that gives. Hopefully quite a good one. There we go. Excellent. So now you can see that we've given it a little bit more topology to work with. Oh, but wait a minute, what did I not do? There we go. There we go. Forgot to store my my history. That would have been awkward. So there we go. We've given it a bit more detail to work with, and it's kept more of that detail in the head. And we're currently sitting at, let's see, 22,000 points, which should be, yeah. So we're looking at 22,000 polys for this. And now I'm going to go into the morph brush, or morph target, hit store morph target, subdivide 4 times. Did I do 4 there? Yes, I did. And then in the morph target options, we're going to step back down, switch our morph target, and then step up, and then delete this morph target and store a new one. So what we now have is a morph target stored at this highest subdivision level with a lot of nice smoothing. And then we're going to go into the subtool palette, scroll down to project, choose project history, and leave everything else at default. And what ZBrush will do is it could take that stored history information and project it back. So we don't have to duplicate a model and then project it manually, which sometimes you will have to do. But this option I find is really useful because it seems to do a better job. It doesn't give me as many errors, so I quite like that approach. But because we were working on a Dynamesh before, we've lost some of our smoothness that we got, which was quite nice. So I'm going to go into the morph brush, and I'm going to go around the bits that I actually don't really like that much. So I'm going to get rid of some of this hard edges, like so. Give us something cleaner to work on. I don't want to get rid of all of it because some of it's really useful for indicating some landmarks, but I'm just going to take the morph brush over with a very light touch and just clean up some of those rough areas. There we go. Excellent. So we're still going to have a little bit of roughness down here at the feet as well, so we'll take the morph brush over that. And the benefit of what we've done is that we can now step up and down those subdivision levels and make tweaks a little bit easier for ourselves. See, there we go, there's something a little bit wrong with what's happened here on the feet. So what I'll do, just noticed a bit of a mistake there, so we're going to grab the claws and I'm going to mask out the back ones. I'm going to split unmasked points, so that's going to give me some front and rear claws. Then with the rear claw, I will turn off symmetry and delete half of them, and then I'll just mirror them over again. And now, hopefully, all being well, they should line up. There we go. Perfect. So, housekeeping time. We're going to take our original aardvark and put it into the old folder. I'm going to rename that to just aardvark. We've got our eyes, and this is our rear claws. So, rear claws. And this is important, folks. ZBrush doesn't have the best subtool layout, so it can sometimes be really hard to find subtools if you've got lots of them. So use folders and name everything as you go. You don't want to end up with over 100 subtools in your list, and you can't find anything. Okay, there is visibility sets that you can use. Okay, but generally it's good practice to just make sure that everything is as it should be. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these eyes and the rear and foreclaws, and I'm going to put them in a folder, and I'm going to call it parts. Okay, like so. Pop them in like that, and now we've got all of our older versions, our new aardvark, and the parts. So let's go ahead and save this new version here, like so. How long we got? Okay, we've only got 10 minutes, folks. So we're going to wrap this. Down, and bear with me. I'm just going to get rid of my wrap this down. Wrap this up is what I meant to say. Brain isn't working, folks. Too busy thinking about the aardvark. The other thing we need to do before we do anything though is we need to change the position for our, there we go, for our block, and then resave. We'll go back to the material we were using before. It's a nice sculpting material. I cannot remember off the top of my head, I'm afraid, who I got this one from. If I remember, I'll try and find out, and I'll maybe mention it, and it can be put in the Firestorm Discord. I believe it's a paid set though, so I don't think they're free, but they're very, very good. So let's pop our latest version from today down here. So I'm going to do Shift S, and then I will bring up the, can't remember which version that is if I'm being totally honest. Let's see, that's stage 2, okay, that's stage 3. Right, so we'll put that one there, Shift S. Over here, we'll do stage 2. Then we have the polygon version. And then we have the Z-sphere version. So we can see the progression, not in the best way obviously, but we can see the progression for our aardvark. We started off with Z-spheres. We then went from Z-spheres into a unified polygon skin where we adapted most of our surfaces and our forms. Then we went from there into a more into a Dynamesh version where we've refined the forms further, added a few more details before shifting over to a subdivided version using Z-remesher, and then we've continued that process by repeating some of the steps we did before by adding and refining the anatomy, the claws, and some of the face areas. Now, we've technically completed our sketch. That's the thing. That's actually what I wanted to make sure we had. We have actually completed the sketch of our aardvark. So we may or may not move on to something new next week. And this was kind of what I wanted. I didn't want us to be stuck on one model for loads and loads of sessions. I want us to be able to get through these fairly quickly. So I think I'm going to make the executive decision here that next week we'll be working on something completely new. We're going to go on to B next week, and we will leave Arnold here as he is, and then he will get put into the vote of whether or not we work him up into a final model. I have a feeling he might be a fan favorite already, so who knows. But we're going to finish up there, folks. So if anyone has any, we've got 5 minutes left. So if anybody has any last little questions, please feel free to ask away in the chat while I take a quick drink. My pleasure, Julio. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream. Yeah, it's something that I try to do, is break down what it is we're doing, because it's helpful from a teaching perspective. You get to see the kind of lumpy bits and the bumpy bits, and this again is not finished. We're not finished at all, but we've got a workable model in only a few hours, really. We were 2 hours last week, we're 2 hours this week. So in a few hours, half a day, this is what you can end up with. And we could do it quicker if we weren't going through it step by step. So something like this, if you were in an industry setting, you'd probably expect it to get to this stage within about an hour, maybe 2 tops. But that's just so that you can then continue to refine it. All right. So yeah, we're going to put this to rest for the time being. An hour is insane. Well, again, it's one of those things where you are pushed to a deadline. You've got to get things out quickly, because the chances are that the reason you would work this quick... sorry, let me explain this properly, Julio. The reason that you would want to get this out really fast is because there's going to be changes. No matter where you're working, you will always come across a project where, even if you love it to death and you think you've done everything perfectly, there will always be changes. So spending a lot of time and a lot of care, no, that's not fair. Care is the wrong word. Spending a lot of time on something and getting precious over it is going to be a waste of your time, because you're going to have to change it. So an art director or a supervisor or a director could come to me and say, right, it's cool, but can we make the ears bigger? Or can we make the ears smaller? Or I don't like the length of the snout. All these things. And we want to keep it in a state that we can change it fast and as possible all the way through the pipeline. And we want to try and retain it for as long as possible, so that it can be changed at any point. Okay, and that's obviously, there's going to get to a point of no return where it just has to be accepted. But we can make our lives a lot easier. And it also is better for the team that we're working with, okay? Because it means that if there is any changes, it's not a huge problem to fix. It's really fast, and then that way it can get back down the rest of the pipe. So, for example, I would knock this out in maybe an hour, maybe 2, and then I would pass it down to look dev, and I would maybe pass it down to texturing, and then to rigging, maybe all at the same time, so they can all start their preliminary work on this asset. Then it would come back to me with notes from a supervisor, or even from rigging or from texturing, who are going to say, oh, can you fix the leg position? Like, say maybe rigging would come back and say, well, we need the tail to be straight. And I'm like, right, I can do that. I can do that really quick. Or texturing say, we don't like the UVs. Can you change this? I mean, that's fine. We can change the UVs, because ultimately at the end of the day, you want your pipeline to run smoothly. So whatever you do at your stage of the pipeline, you want to make sure that the person you're passing it on to down the pipe, you make their job as easy as possible. Don't make their life hard. Make it as easy as you can, okay? And that will keep things, hopefully, running as smoothly as possible. It rarely works out perfectly like that, but that's the goal that we always try to aim for. All right, folks. And on that note, I'm going to leave everybody to the rest of their evening. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. And I will see you all next Monday for the third part of our ZBrush A to Z, where we'll be making, who knows, I'm not sure yet, but it will be beginning with the letter B, that you can guarantee. All right, folks. Until next time, take care.